Well, you're very welcome back to Counterpoint. I'm here today with somebody who's standing for the first time to be a TD, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion. This is Elaine Mullally. Elaine, you were one of the co-founders of Independent Ireland, and which is making some progress in the political sphere. And then you left it quite recently. I'd like to separate that, if I could, for a second, just to start this discussion away from your decision to stand as an independent TD, just to get to an understanding of why you did that. What was the process of your thinking about it? Because obviously it drove then into standing as an independent TD, but I suspect that they were separate decisions. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. No, 100%. I set the party up as an alternative, basically, to government, because we saw in 2020 there was a huge swing towards Sinn Féin in that general election. So I knew there was an appetite out there for change from Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, that the whole switch there. But so I thought, well, Sinn Féin are not showing themselves up to be the opposition that we all thought they were going to be. So I thought that a good idea would be to bring as many independents together as possible, and that they could possibly become a force to be reckoned with. So that was why Independent Ireland. And then we have we attract 3 sitting TDs, as you know, that Michael Collins from Cork, Richard Donoghue from Limerick, and Michael Fitzmaurice from Galway. And we ran 58 candidates in the local election, got 23 elected. We ran 3 MEPs, 1 got elected. So I suppose from my own personal perspective, I realised quite early, back in March, that my voice as a founding member and chairperson of the party wasn't being heard at that stage, because, I had been very, very strong and very vocal about the 2 upcoming referendums in March.
These were the constitutional referendums in March this year.
Yeah.
And what were you looking for? What did you want Because I was always confused. Had Independent Ireland any policies at the time? I was looking for policies. I must have been looking in outer space.
Look, I was a very strong advocate for no. That was I was from the very get go on all my social media channels, and I was very strong on it. I was very vocal within the party.
And just to pause you there, Elaine, you were no when the entire commentariat and the media, even the dogs in the street, were saying vote yes.
Literally.
Yeah.
They were. And at that particular time, I suppose, I was listening to what people were telling me. I have a business in Portaranton, and people were coming in talking, all the parents were telling me stuff. And then, I was talking to people in my own town and community. Plus, I was obviously starting to speak to candidates that were running for the party. So I knew that there was a very, very, very large sway on the.
And just for people who don't know, Elaine, your business in Portarlington was what?
It's Clown Around Play Centre. It's in children's indoor soft play. So we do birthday parties and all of that.
Okay. So that would introduce you to a broad cross section of local. And just so people understand as well, like we actually know each other. We've met over the last few years at open public meetings here and there that you were instrumental in organising. You've been quite an activist, really, in that sense, up to the decision to help establish Independent Ireland.
Yeah. Well, I was, and still am, obviously.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I'm not prepared to just go down.
You're going up into senior hurling now, as they say, round hurling. So, so just walk us through then. So, I mean, that was a big decision. I mean, you co-founded the party. You must have put hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours into it. And the next thing you decided, no, you're not listening to me. And then you decided. I mean, obviously you must have got to a point of extreme frustration internally.
No, absolutely. I mean, it had gone from being such. I was so passionate about something to completely being deeply unhappy, and just I had to genuinely sit down and work out, well, what am I doing here? Is this something am I going to continue to invest my energy into something that's just not reaping any benefits for what I would consider the people?
Well, this is really more about you, as you know, but I'm just trying to get a sense of Independent Ireland as well, just before we get going. And that's that, I I mean, it just struck me that, I mean, if they were for yes in the referendum, and that there's no difference at all except for a lick of paint between Independent Ireland as it was then and let's call it the Uniparty, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, whatever about the rump of the Greens, and Sinn Féin in the meantime. Their poll numbers have more than halved. So there's been quite a lot of dramatic change, not just in your life, but actually in political life in a very short period of time.
I just want to clarify, they weren't necessarily a yes either. It was that they were getting it difficult to make a decision in relation to what we should put out publicly. Whereas I was already saying 100% no. There might have been a bit of a debate about should we go yes, no, which would have caused serious confusion because which is yes, the families or the carers, which one are you going yes, which are you going no for. Okay. So it had to be a no from my perspective. They did actually, they did put out a message in the end. It was quite late and it was quite weak, again, in my opinion.
Oh, okay.
And, where I just felt we should have been stronger. That was the first point where we had to be strong and to say to people, this is who we are, this is what we're about, and this is what we stand for. And it just didn't materialize for me. So
you didn't think that they were you didn't think they were radically differentiating themselves from the Uniparty?
Yeah. And I understand, I was making allowances for the fact that, we were in our infancy and trying to establish ourselves. And, there's always that tendency for the media to attack something new.
Yeah.
And particularly something that might be different to government or challenging them. So I was conscious also that, everybody was trying to play it safe and trying to, do the right thing to keep going rather than necessarily, jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah. Plant your flag and let people see it for it.
Yeah.
Well, you got that one right anyway, because I mean, the vote in March was overwhelmingly no. I mean, it was very dramatic rejection by the Irish people of the main political establishment and the mainstream media commentariat. I mean, it was quite dramatic rejection of them.
Well, it was over 70% in most cases. Yeah. So yeah, there was a significant.
So then you then decided to stand, and before we get into that, just by way of people who don't know you, because this will be going out nationally. Can you just tell us a bit about the constituency, Elaine, and then we'll get into I know you've been doing a lot of you've been doing an awful lot of listening. I've seen that because I follow you on social media. I know you've been doing an awful lot of listening, and that's what I'm really interested in hearing about. But can you just sketch out the constituency for people who don't know it? So
in the 2020 election, I would have been actually, Portarlington is the town I'm from. So it was actually moved into South Kildare, incredibly, for that election. Now, before that, we were Laois Offaly. So in this upcoming election, we're moved back into our proper constituency of Laois. So I'll be contesting the Laois general election. And just from a breakdown politically at the moment, we have 3 sitting TDs from Laois. We've Sean Fleming from Fianna Fáil. Charlie Flanagan is retiring, so he's been replaced by Willie Aird. And
he's been replaced by whom?
Willie Aird. He's a county councillor. Fine Gael county councillor. And Brian Stanley, Sinn Féin, is the third.
Yeah, his name is in the media quite a bit at the moment, Brian Stanley, and I mean that's very interesting. It's just coincidental. That happens to be happening. Sinn Féin themselves seem to be all over the shop at the moment, kind of in an omni-war, internally and externally, at a very inappropriate time for them. If there would appear to be a general election announcement, literally in the winds over the next few days, is that how you would read it as well, or would you have a different reading?
Yeah, no, I think they're in a lot of bother, because. Well, you may have heard, Aidan Mullins, the local county councillor here in my own town of Portarlington, he resigned from the party quite recently as well. So he's now independent. And Brian Stanley left and has declared himself a Republican independent. So, and then in South Kildare, which I'm currently in, my constituency at the moment, we have Patricia Ryan, who left Sinn Féin in the last 2 weeks as well. So there's been a huge upheaval, as you say, within Sinn Féin at the moment. And, obviously, I'm hoping it's going to work to my advantage because, if there's problems there, well, then obviously there's votes up for grabs.
So is it a 3-seater then, Elaine?
Yeah.
So the third seat, by the sound of it, then the third seat is really up for grabs, isn't it?
Yeah, well, technically speaking, you could say that
because
Charlie Flanagan's retiring, there's 2 seats up for grabs, and
okay.
Again, realistically, I don't know. I do know now, but there's not a great feeling on the ground for any of the government parties at the moment. Yeah. So I'm going to throw it out there. They're all up for grabs.
Well, can I just dive into that? So when did you, just again for people who don't know you, when did you announce you were going to stand as a TD for the constituency?
I announced back in July. It was late enough. Probably it could have been even August, Eddie, that I would have announced. Because I had to. The way I was looking at it was, I have to do something with the energy that I have after, with like, one thing running the party has taught me is that there's definitely an appetite there for change. People want something different. They want an alternative. They thought Sinn Féin were going to be the alternative, and it looks like they weren't, or they're not. So I still believe people want that alternative. I think people are crying out.
Yeah, well, let's just get into that. So obviously, okay, let's just so far, right? You've been involved in open public meetings all around various issues over the last number of years, especially around the because that's where I met you at the pandemic response type of meetings that were happening, and then you take the bull by the horns, and with working with your co-founder, you establish Independent Ireland. You don't like the look of it. This isn't a fit for you anymore, and you resign. And next thing you're standing as an independent TD in your own right. I mean, it is a progression. I can see that. But what's interesting is that, I mean, you announced in, say, September, July, August, which is really this, it's a silly season. It's summer holidays. People are, kids are going back to school at the end of September, and sorry, the end of August. So really, you're only really fresh at this 6 to 8 weeks, roughly, in that kind of space. So, given what was in your mind, your agenda, when you set out on this road, and it's a very, like I've said this to many people, it's a very courageous thing to do. It takes a lot of gumption and resilience to do all this. I'm just say that to everybody because I know it does. I've seen it. It's a very, very trying thing to do. But when you set out, you obviously had a set of things in your head as being the key items, and you've now gone around the constituency. I know you're doing a lot of talking and listening. Can you just walk us through the process that you were engaged in, and what you've learned, or what you picked up, or what you might have changed in your mind?
Sure. So a lot of people, when I speak to them about why am I running for politics, being genuine and authentic, the main reason why I'm running is because about a year and a half ago, I stood in my kitchen here at home, looked out into the back garden, and I said to Aidan, my husband, do you think we'd fit 2 log cabins in the back garden? And he said to me, why would you want to put 2 log cabins in the back garden? And I said, sure, where are the girls going to live? Our 2 daughters who are 20 and 21. And there was a realization then on me that the whole landscape of this country has changed so drastically in a short period of time that our children are possibly not going to be able to stay here and live here. So because they won't be able to afford it, or they won't be able to find somewhere to live. So housing would have been number 1 on my priority list. So I had a list of priorities coming into the public meeting.
Yeah, but when you say housing, you're actually talking about keeping your kids in the country. I mean,
well, yeah, housing. I mean, just keeping my kids in the country. I mean, that's. Yeah. I mean, yes, as a parent, I would love to see them travel. I've no problem with that. I'm not, expecting them to stay here forever. But they should at least have an option of being able to come home here to live.
Yeah.
And that's not there at the moment. And that's not there for a lot of people, for people who are well in their 30s and 40s trying to come back home here. There is nowhere for them. So that would have been high on my priority list, I suppose, in the beginning. And then I would have seen immigration as a huge problem in the early stages as well. Cost of living. There's a list. I have a list of about 9 different priorities.
Yeah.
Having gone and done, I had 7 different listening tours throughout Laois, and they were in majorly the top 7 towns, I suppose, around the county.
When you say listening tours now, you mean you broke them into several days in a row, or 7? I mean, in a row?
Yeah, 7. So 7 different over the month of September. I did 2 meetings a week in different locations. Obviously, Portarlington, Portlaoise, Abbeyleix, kind of Slieve, Mount Rath, Mount Mellick, and Coleshin. So they were well attended. There was all different walks of life and all different types of people come into the room. And from that, then I could.
Well, hold on a second, because remember, you're starting off as a newbie. When you say well attended, what do you mean by that? And how did you manage to let people know you were coming on a listening?
Okay.
How did you get that out there? I mean, it's very difficult because you're doing it all. You're doing it all yourself from your own resources, presumably.
Yeah. Well, we put posters up around each of the villages and towns before. So a week beforehand, we got permission to do all of this as well. So we put the posters up.
Old school. Yeah. You
old school. Yeah. Hear ye.
Right. Okay.
So the posters were put up a week in advance, and then there was notices put into whatever, local newsletters and stuff that you be notified. And then put it out on social media. Facebook is great for getting the message out quickly. And then maybe the Saturday before the meeting, I would go to that town with flyers and stand outside a supermarket or, the most busiest spot I could find in that town. And myself and 2 or 3 other people would give out flyers and talk to people and tell them there was a public meeting coming up. And we called all the businesses in that town as well and let them know this meeting's happening and you're more than welcome to attend. There was roughly between 20 and 40, which I believe is supposed to be brilliant. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is. Yeah. I mean, that's what raised my eyes. 20 and 40. I mean, that's a big turnout. I mean, if you're doing 7 of those and you've gone around the entire gone around to talk to people, and if they genuinely feel that you're listening to them, that you're really absorbing what they're saying. I mean, that's ground hurling, Elaine, isn't it?
Yeah, and I am. And to be fair, there was it was a double whammy for me, to be fair, on those tours, and it wasn't my intention initially, but it just escalated. Was that I have a campaign team of about 40 people built from those meetings, because people were turning up, and then if they liked what they heard and they loved the fact they were being heard and their voice was being listened to, they've since come on my campaign team. So it's just after strengthening that and growing that to so it was a double, it was a win-win basically.
So this is quite extraordinary what you're saying. It's not extraordinary, but I think actually, but most people will find it quite extraordinary that autism is becoming a significant issue, certainly in the area you're in. If it's happening in your constituency, it's nationwide. So how prevalent is this, and what are mums and dads saying to you?
I'm going to be honest with you, Eddie, it's overwhelming. And I know I've said I have 2 daughters, 20 and 21, and when I look at their whole generation, they seem to be relatively speaking, there's not so many children of that age group. They're not children, of course, they're adults now, but it seems to be, it was mind-blowing. It was actually mind-blowing turning up to meetings to hear parents stand up, one after the other, to say, my child has been diagnosed, or I'm waiting 6 years for my child to receive diagnosis. It's the amount of children and parents that's mind-blowing, and also the lack of supports that are there for the families. That's even more mind-blowing, because we all saw the money just after blowing recently up in Dáil Éireann on bike sheds and mobile phone pouches and stuff. And these children and their families are really, really, really struggling. It's incredible. And what you attribute it to, parents are telling me all sorts of, you can go down, there's loads of conspiracies out there. There's loads of theories out there about what it could be. It could be a combination of things. Could it be, things in isolation? I'm not really sure. It's very, very difficult to say.
Well, maybe I can help, because one of the key hypotheses, and it's a hypothesis, it needs to be scientifically proven. There seems to be a correlation between the amount of vaccination that is going on in the human population and the explosion of autism. Robert F. Kennedy talks about this all the time. Now he's saying that it's not scientifically proven, but it needs to be scientifically investigated. That it warrants that. But when people are saying we're not getting enough support and we're waiting years for this and that, do you think that then feeds into the kind of fed up general feeling that we're that it feeds into the what I call the new kind of immigration cycle we're now seeing, where people are coming into the country, the type of people are arriving in here that we're just simply not used to arriving in, and the numbers they're arriving in, and very, very different to the immigration that we've had over the last 20 years.
People are, like me, just fed up of the whole, we're not being listened to, we're not being heard. It feels like, the government are up in ivory towers looking down on us. They don't even respond to an awful lot of, people are telling me this as well, but I've witnessed it myself. They won't even respond to an email. It's like, that's how out of touch they've become with the people on the ground. And that connection is seriously lost, and people are genuinely crying out for that again. And that's something I always assumed we had in politics. It was always assumed, that they were on the ground, they were talking to the people, because they spoke like that all along. But realistically, that's not what they've been doing. So the people that have these children with special needs, they just feel completely abandoned. They actually genuinely feel that there's just the scale of it is phenomenal. And I've said this to parents. A huge worry I have is if the government and the health service, if we're not putting the supports in place for these children and to help these families right now, what's going to happen when all of these children grow up? If the supports are not there for them as children, then when they become adults, they're going to become dependent upon the state.
So you went out, and correct me if I'm wrong, you went out believing that housing, the capacity to have your two daughters actually be able to grow up and live in the country that they've been educated in and they've been loved in and all that, their own culture. You thought that was the major issue, and you actually went out to discover actually the major issue is parents with autism.
And if I don't meet a parent on the door who has a child, I'm meeting a grandparent who has a grandchild. That's the scale of this is incredible. And
the range of autistic behavior then, or outside of the prevalence, I presume that it's from low level autism right up to the quite extreme levels of autism.
The problem is that diagnosis is taking so long. Okay. And like, I remember my GP years ago saying, show me the boy of 0 to 7 and I'll show you the man of 7 to 70. There's a lot in that. The first 7 years of life are hugely important for these children and their families. So if they're not getting diagnosed early enough, not being able to get the proper treatments, the proper resources are not being put in. Even for parents, they're not necessarily looking for the government to hand everything to them. They just need the diagnosis. They need to know where to go next. Like you said, the range is how long is a piece of string? Yeah,
it's an old refrain. Yeah, I've been involved for a long time with the Jack and Jill Children's Foundation. Sure, the very genesis of it was on the same. It was on the same space, really, abandonment by the state of an issue. Until it was forced, until it was dealt with privately, and then it became a major foundation. Because of the support of the people rather than the support.
See, because people need to get in behind this for it to become, more prevalent. Like, more people need to speak out. And you know what else I've noticed is that the parents of these children, they're so busy with the children. They're not getting a chance to do anything outside of that.
Yeah, they need respite.
Parents actually haven't left. Parents who haven't gone out as a couple for a meal together in over 5 years.
Yeah, they need respite. They need respite, care. And so I mean, that's a bit of a shocker, really. I'd have been shocked, and presume you were as well. I mean, you weren't expecting that.
No, and parents, when I go back to the diagnosis just briefly, a lot of parents have told me that they have gone privately to get the diagnosis. It's cost anything €1,300, but they've paid privately. And one parent said, I paid privately for my son to be assessed 8 years ago, and he still hasn't been called by the HSE.
Yeah.
So the child is 10 now, and he still has. So again, I'm not targeting the HSE here. I'm not saying they're obviously completely under-resourced and overwhelmed with the demand for these services as well. But that's not the problem on the ground. Still needs to be sorted.
What are the other major issues then?
Immigration is causing huge problems. It's causing anger on the door. Not for me personally, but it's causing. There's a lot of anger out there over.
Can we just focus on that for a second, Elaine, and just break that down for me? When you say anger on the doorstep about immigration, like, what specifically are people occupied about immigration? Because I mean, we've had very successful immigration into Ireland for a long time, you know.
Absolutely. And people don't object to that.
Yeah.
People are, you know, the Irish people are not racist, Eddie. They're not. They're genuinely open-hearted. You know, we're that type of nation that wants to help people. And so to hear, you know, people, the first thing to say to me is, "I'm not racist," but you don't have to explain that. You don't have to do. You know, you're free to speak here. But they're angry about. A lot of people are angry because the people paying taxes in this country get absolutely nothing. If they need support from if they're out of work temporarily, they get nothing. If their children are going to college, they're entitled to no SUSI grants. So many people are above the parapet in relation to you can get supports if you're earning this amount. They're above the thresholds and they're below the threshold, so they can't really afford. They're caught. A lot of people are caught in that trap, and they're looking at other people coming into this country, you know, and we know
without paperwork. Yeah, we're talking about the wave of illegal immigration coming in.
You know, the federal government sent out a tweet in 7 different languages or 8 different languages, inviting people to come here, promising turnkey properties within 3 months, and all of this. Like, that's hard to hear when you're working and living in this country your whole life, and then you need something and you can't get it for your child, for yourself, for your family. The same with housing. Just sure, it's, you know, if you bring in 200,000 people into a country over the space of 2 years, where are they all going to live?
Yeah.
So there's an automatic that the demand, the supply is not meeting demand. It's not even anywhere remotely near it. I read somewhere recently that were 300,000 houses in deficit in this country.
Yeah, well, yeah, and when that feeds back into your concern about your daughters, and by the way, I speak for my own family as well. I mean, my oldest fella and his partner left. Two very qualified people. They left for the same reason. They said Dublin is broken. We can't afford to live here, so they just went. They're now living in Western Finland, having a completely different type of lifestyle, with a very extremely well run society. You pay for it. But I'll tell you, the hospital system, the education system, the transport system, childcare, and old age, all very, very well looked after. But anyway, look, by the way, with a society and an economy that's broadly similar to Ireland, so just fundamentally different.
So we're paying for it here, but we're not getting it.
And when you then look at that, right, as a second biggest issue, how aware have people been that the Omni Party, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, and the Greens on the whip voted that we should jump into the EU Migration Pact, and the Danes went in the other direction. We're the only 2 countries that didn't have to because we had the opt-out, and every single independent TD in the country voted, obviously getting their instructions from their constituents, to vote against it, but it went through. So it looked to me, I mean, I was across the road watching it in horror, across the road from the Dáil. It looked to me that the Dáil was taking its instructions from masters other than the Irish people, and there just simply wasn't enough independent TDs to stop.
See, people on the doors. Well, again, people I'm speaking to are telling me straight up they're blaming the government for this. Okay. They're saying it's a government problem. I don't suspect, everybody would have done the kind of research that we would have in relation to who votes for what, but the 2 main parties that are in power are getting the blame, and I know the Greens are in there as well, but Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are taking a serious amount of the hit in relation to the direct problems that people are facing at the moment.
But we seem to be, Elaine, do you not think we're kind of a bit behind the switch in Europe, because there's been a pivot back to the centre now, common sense centre. Now, the media like to call it that the hard right, it's actually the centre. People are, like throughout Europe, Italy, Austria, Germany, the AfD in Germany have created change with the Conservatives, Holland, and the list goes on. And whereas in Ireland, we just seem to be just drifting along, saying, look at the great economic growth we're getting, as if somehow that's the be all and the end.
Yeah, exactly. But you see, that's it as well. That's a narrative coming out of government and media's mouths. The people down here are not seeing that. It's not materializing into anything concrete for them. So they're not being fooled. Like, they really are not being fooled by they don't care about the word inflation. They care about going into the supermarket and spending an extra 20 quid on the shopping based on last month. They don't care about, we've got full employment. They care about the fact that, their son or daughter can't work here because they can't afford to. So everything's relative, and bringing it right down to brass tacks, bringing it right down to bread and butter issues. The government have not delivered, and people are seeing through that. Well, first and foremost, there has never been a female TD for Laois.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I've been referred to as fresh face, fresh outlook in relation to politics. I've had a business for 16 years, so I believe that a country should be run very similar to a business in that everything should be accountable for. If I overspend here in my business, then something's going to suffer. So I have to watch where I spend and how I spend my money. Again, I believe that should happen in governments, and there's nobody held to account. I suppose my biggest thing is that realistically, there's so many other things I could be doing with my life.
Yeah.
I really want to give this my all, 100%. I'm out knocking on doors 4 nights a week at the moment, and on a Saturday, and I'm holding more meetings. I have a big meeting coming up shortly for carers and people who are genuinely struggling with the special needs and autism, as I said earlier. But I'm listening. I'm not afraid to speak up. I have courage and integrity and the conviction to bring things to fruition. So I don't talk the talk, actually walk the walk. And
actually, I'm going to help you there, because you've proven that. I mean, you stood up with inside an independent Ireland, where you could have just had a soft saddle run through the whole thing as a co-founder and get involved in the professional side of the organisation pretty quickly, and you didn't. You walked out the door and said, no, you're not doing what the people want you to do, or at least what I think the people want you to do. And you planted your own flag. That's what, if I was you, that's what I would be, because that's the truth of it.
Yeah. Well, it's true as well. Like you say, I'm so true to myself.
Yeah.
And to what I firmly believe in, for people, we've.
So when you made the decision then, and you gathered the family and friends together to tell them, what kind of reaction did you get initially, and how did you manage that? Because it's not an easy conversation, I'd imagine. I don't want to delve into the private stuff of the family.
No, I have no problem. Actually, you asked me earlier, when did I announce, and I actually decided on the 19th of July that I was running, and I was in Greece with my daughter, my eldest girl, Rachel, celebrating her 21st on that day. And I said to her, she and I were sitting by a pool, it was lovely. And I said, I really don't know what to do here. I said, should I run or should I not run? And she just turned to me and she said, Ma'am, you have to make the best decision for you. You've reared us. Don't worry about us. You do you. She said, I have to concentrate on the rest of my life. And she said, so whatever is calling you, you do it, and you stand into it, and we'll all get in behind you. And Aidan, my husband, is brilliant. He's doing everything that I possibly couldn't do in the background. And it wasn't a big decision, as big a decision for my family as it was for me. They would say it was a natural progression route for me. And they, have great faith and confidence in me. And
so Aidan is in charge of logistics now, voluntarily, while you do you're at the cutting edge. Yeah.
The two girls have taken over the business.
Oh, have they? I see. Very good.
They're running that. And Rachel is my assistant campaign manager with the eldest girl again. And Becky's amazing. They're two great, independent, confident women. Becky was out canvassing with me on Monday. She did a day off college, and we great crack. Like, that's knocking on doors, talking to people. All sorts of people come out with loads of funny stories, and yes, we hear the sad ones, but it's good fun. There's great energy around the campaign, to be honest, Eddie.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that I say to everybody who I come across, who's helping me, my family initially, was we have to have fun with this. The minute this stops being fun for us, then we're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And so far, this has been high energy, good fun, and I can't wait to get out on the doors this evening. I'm over in Rathdowney for 4:00, and I'm genuinely looking forward to it. And anyone that's come with me has texted me this morning to say, "Can't wait, see you later." And that's the energy there is around it. So I think if I can just sum up one thing, I think I'd lost hope. I'd lost hope in, and it pains me to say this, but I'd lost hope in the political, in Ireland. I'd lost hope in what was happening in decision making at every level. Everything seemed, but since I've decided to run, I feel there's hope. I feel there's some chance of turning things around. If enough people like me step forward, and enough people, out there are fed up enough to vote for people like me, and then people like me get in, then what can happen could be amazing. We could turn this country around again.
And where do you think that wellspring of energy is actually coming from? Where do you think it's like? You're burning up an awful lot of physical energy and mental energy. This is not easy. And so where's the well? Where do you go to the well?
Well, I'm being fed from a lot of different sources, but the voters, the team who came in behind me initially from those meetings, they were the ones that made me think this is actually the right path. This is what I should be doing. And then there are lots of people across the country. We have a mutual friend, by the way, which I discovered this morning, Abby Wynne, and Adam helped me just.
Right. Okay.
Set me this early on for protection.
Didn't know that. You're right. Okay.
And wisdom.
So people are being attracted towards you then.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah, you draw in, like-minded people and good people.
Yeah.
We're finding it. Well, we found each other. We're finding each other the whole way through our lives. I know, but good people want good things to happen, and if enough good people, which I believe the timing is right, if enough good people want it to happen, it's going to happen.
But how will you then do? I mean, presumably they're going to call a general election within the next number of working days. I don't know when this is going to get out for broadcast, but we're having this discussion on the 17th of October. So just let me date stamp that, and Thursday the 17th of October. So when it's called, I mean, how and quite clearly the Omni Party will now switch back towards the centre again because they want to make the right noises to attract in the soft mobile votes they might otherwise feel they lose unless they say the right thing. But when you actually look at the delivery on this stuff, especially, for example, with the hate crime attempt there to ram it through the Seanad and everything behind all that, I mean, do you think that would you be confident that people will not be duped by that, because it will be just a shift in narrative, not a shift in policy?
Yeah, there's an element of fear around that they're going to come out with their jargon, and I've already heard Fine Gael have knocked on a few doors, and now not here, not in my constituency, but across the country, and when they're challenged about the bike shed, they're saying, "Oh, that was the OPW." That was the
government, not us. Yeah.
They all spent on that, and the person just said, "But who employs the OPW?" I mean, accountability. I think I hope there's been too many big mistakes. From again what I'm hearing, people are just kind of going, we're just fed up. It's where do you start and where do you finish? You've made that many blunders, particularly recently, that I don't know if they can backpedal enough to get out of it. And it's easy for me to get out and hold public meetings. It's very easy for me to knock on the doors. I've no baggage of a party.
Yeah.
But I'd love to know what they're hearing, because if one of the first questions a political person will ask, and not everybody, but politically minded people, the first question they ask is, what party are you with? When I say I'm independent, they say, what party were you with? Who have you run with before? So they want to know if you're after jumping from Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael or Sinn Féin to now become an independent, because they know it's probably more sexy to run as an independent at the moment than it was in previous times. So clearly the move on, if all these people are jumping out of their parties into independence, then they know that there's a big swing towards independence.
And do you see any room, Elaine, for let's just assume that the independent vote is going to rise sharply. Well, relative, it's already up. It's a very healthy level. But let's say that there's just more. Do you see any room for a kind of a general accords across the independent sector? Because it's a bit like a bag of cats. Sometimes it looks that way anyway. Do you see that happening this time around?
I suppose it depends on who gets in and, how strong their politics are. Like, I see myself as very centrist in all of this. And so I think that the damage that's been done, how much work has to be done to get that undone, all of that legislation that's come in, as you said, the hate speech stuff, they wanted a much more rigorous and fearful hate speech than they got in. But there was enough of people like me and you and others who spoke out against it, and good politicians who spoke out against it. And it was through all of that we got that stopped. So they got some of it through, and I don't agree with any of it going through, but they got some of it through, and here we are. So I do think I use the word alignment because I think that could sum up a lot better. If there's enough people aligned on the other side, then we can do powerful things. We don't necessarily have to be forming parties.
No. That wouldn't work anyway.
I just a really strong alignment. And if there's the 80-20 rule, if we can get, 80% of people to agree on most of the stuff that I would be strong about. But then I feel that those people, I feel like I represent more than 80% of the people at the moment, because of what I'm hearing on the doors, and because over 70% of people voted no in the referendum. And I feel I represent their voices already because, I'm speaking the same language as them.
But what you haven't said in anything, we've been talking now for quite a bit, what you haven't said, we've made no remark about anybody else canvassing in the constituency. You said there from what I'm hearing from around the country. I mean, I know that obviously the Sinn Féin are in 6s and 7s in the constituency because their attention is clearly internal at the moment for obvious reasons. Fine Gael heavyweight Charlie Flanagan is going off into retirement. I haven't heard of this councillor. Maybe he's well known in the constituency. I've just nationally he's unheard of. Is coming in. But there's no. I mean, it's quite clear that the general election is weeks away, and there's no canvassing going on from the Uni Party, which seems to me to indicate that they think it's game on. I mean, it's just a question of turning up and going through the motions.
There's probably that kind of sentiment that we don't need to. I presume, obviously, throughout all the years, they've got their little foot soldiers on the ground. They're there already, and obviously a low turnout in an election suits the, as you call them, the Uni Party.
Yeah.
But that's another thing, Eddie, just if I could throw it in, is that I've had a campaign going locally here, again within Laois, where I've contacted every single secondary school in the county, and I got a little card done up with a QR code with the register to vote. I've also produced videos where I'm encouraging more younger people, well, everybody, but younger people, to utilise their vote, because the more people that register and the more people that get out and vote, the less chance the parties have of getting back in. That's statistically proven. So they don't want a high turnout. And whereas a high turnout would obviously suit independence and, anybody trying to break in, because we don't have the same crew on the ground that they.
Yeah, Elaine, you mentioned schools there. Have you run across, is there any sign of rising concern about what's actually going on at the curriculum level when it comes to this social studies curriculum stuff going in? I did an extensive interview recently with Jana London on this, and my research into it in preparation for that, I was shocked what I was running across. Is that beginning to filter around now, or is it?
Yeah, well, we actually had a teacher turn up at one of the meetings with the books,
Okay.
and she was an amazing lady, and she was so worked up about speaking about it that she almost cried when she had finished talking, because the relief of being able to speak, because they're being silenced within their profession.
Yeah.
And so you know, I suppose there's a lot of counter information. So as soon as something goes out that's factual, then the government throws something out in the back of Norma Foley saying that's not true, and all they have to say is that's not true. But yet, when you look at all the research and all of the information that's put out in relation to all of this this literature, I mean, it's there in black and white, and people can see it for themselves, and yet the government think all they have to say is
this is this ideology. Let's, for those that are wondering what we're talking about, gender ideology, and it's coming in now as low as age 12 with some pretty rough, I would say, very rough, and very shocking documents coming through that are staying in the school and not going back to parents, and contracts of silence in the class. And I mean, these are the allegations that for me stand up. But when the teacher in Laois turned up, obviously very animated about it, feeling that she needed to get it off her chest, that she was being silenced internally, the pressure to keep your head down. What in particular did she say that resonated with those that heard this?
Her main concern, she also stepped away as an SPHE teacher. She felt there was an obligation on her not to teach this material because it just didn't feel right. So, but like it's the fact that there's 8 pages on masturbation in this book that she brought to the meeting, and we looked at.
And that's going in as young as age 12, so that people are clear.
That's 12 to 13-year-olds, and I am a parent, so I believe there's a responsibility upon parents, and I understand that there's parents out there who don't do that work, who don't take on that role. But is it up to the school curriculum system to force a one shoe fits all? If you have a very sensitive child that's not able to process some of that information, they're very confusing years. And having 2 daughters, they're starting puberty at 12, 13. It looks and feels very, very inappropriate. And as a parent, that's my view, that's my opinion on it. From hearing people on the doors, there's also a little bit of there's blurred lines around it. So people on the doors would ask me, what's your view on transgenderism? And because it's been blurred in the school system, it's like and I can't explain that up any better than it's causing confusion among parents, because they're trying to throw transgenderism and all of this sexualization into the same.
Yeah, well, what I find remarkable is that kids are going into one class to be presented with a transgender ideology, which is no scientific basis. It's just an ideology, and in the next class they're meeting the biology teacher who's saying there's only 2 genders. And there may be physiological and psychological reasons for what's going on, but like as you point out, most kids go through this confusion and come out perfectly fine on the other side. But where I would have a great concern is if it's becoming a kind of an ideology that's being taught by third parties coming into the schools and giving talks to children, because there's some evidence of that. It looks as if the actual curriculum documents themselves aren't being approved by the Department of Education. They're just being printed by printers in line with the principles around all this and just being delivered. And then books themselves are staying in the classroom and not coming home to mum and dad, who are the primary educators under the Constitution. So I think it's a shocker. And I think most people in Ireland are pretty liberal-minded, happy, let people get on with it. But it's a different thing when it's an indoctrination that's going on. That takes it to a different level.
And it's like you say, if they're hiding stuff from parents, like that's not a good sign. Because, again, as a parent, when my girls were that age, I used to spend time with them. Like, you have to give children that energy, that time, to teach them to think critically, and for them to understand that just because you read it in this book doesn't make it necessarily 100% correct or factual. You have to challenge. And I think that's huge. Like, to teach a child to think critically is far more important than to teach a child through 8 pages.
Well, I would say to teach the child and the adults as well. A lot of adults. I mean, there's been a great diminution in critical thinking over the last number of years because deplatforming and the cancellation culture and all that. But I mean, this is just my opinion. Looking at what's going on in Europe, I mean, people, there's a general wake up going on across the place. The zero carbon by 25 years is that people are just rolling their eyes at now, saying, "Sure, that's impossible without extreme poverty." And this other stuff is clearly not working very well either. So there seems to me to be a general pivot going on, certainly in Europe, and I think on the ground in Ireland, it's just not yet officially recognised by the political establishment. They seem to be in a bubble.
Yeah, and I had a very interesting conversation yesterday evening with one of my opponents in the constituency, the Green Party representative, and she and I had a great chat on the door, and she actually said to me, "You're extremely green." I said, "I know." I said, because by nature, people want to do their best for the planet. It's just that forcing it on people doesn't work. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And forcing it on people when we don't have the infrastructure is even worse, because you're forcing people into poverty. And a really good example of that is one of the cheapest houses that you can buy around, say, Laois at the moment. A starter house now is considered to be 330,000. 330,000 is a third of a million. Like, it's a serious, significant amount of money. And when you look at, all the houses now that they're building have to be A-rated, and they have to have this, and they have to have that, and they have to have the other. Yes, A-rated is fantastic. But if somebody can't afford an A-rated house, they should be given the opportunity to buy or build a house that's whatever. Don't even put a rating on it. Build what they can afford. And then through the years, we built this house 30 years ago, and we have the walls pumped in, 7 or 8 years ago. We got the walls pumped, got the attic insulated thicker throughout the years as everything changes. Yeah. So the house now is right up to standard. New windows, new doors, because we could afford to do it. We were financially more sound as time went by. But forcing people to buy or build a house to that standard when they can't is just, it's lunacy.
Final question for you, Elaine. So, as we sit here on the 17th, Thursday, the 17th of October, when based on your understanding, and I know it's guesswork, but you'd have the educated guesswork now because you'd be picking up a lot of political signals that maybe would be running past your head before. But what's the general view? Because posters are being printed, all the signs of a new war about to break out. I mean, political campaign. What's your sense of when the general election will be? What date will the general election be called, in and around?
I've always said the 15th of November, and I'm starting to turn on that slightly, because as you say, it's the 17th of October. But I do believe it will be before the end of November.
Well, because
they won't want it going into December. I heard somebody talk earlier on the radio that there was the toy show is the 6th of December or something this year. It sounds very late, and they won't want it on the toy show. They won't want it that day. So I'm still, I reckon when I'm talking to people again on the doors, I'm saying to them, they're going to call election pretty soon, and it's going to be next month. What do you think?
Well, I think it's only in Ireland that the date of a political election could be influenced by a kids show about toys on a television channel. I mean, it's quite extraordinary. But I get it. But I mean, if somebody listening from the outside would think we're all insane, after listening to the conversation, that we ended on a note of insanity. But for those that don't understand Ireland, it's not actually. It's how the place works.
It's common. It's normal here. We're not wrapping up.
No. I just wanted to say to you that I just wanted to thank you for stepping forward, Elaine. I know we've met a couple of times over the recent years. It's a great thing that you're doing. I think you would make a wonderful candidate myself. I wish I was in the constituency. If I was, I would vote for you in a heartbeat. And I think a lot of other people will see that too in you. I wish you well over the next number of weeks. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens nationally as well as in your own constituency. I think that the configuration of the next Dáil, if it has a very large number of independent TDs, can only be good for Irish politics. We'll work it out. Other European countries work it out when you get, kind of an atomized political environment. People just have to change the way of working. So all of the nonsense you'll hear about that from the Uni Party, from Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, just nonsense. And we badly need this. We badly need this. I'm now be having listened to you. I think the autism thing is real wake up. It's a real shocker that, that kind of changes the order of priorities, housing, immigration, which is related to housing. All of that is feeding in, and the Irish people need hope. We need hope. We need to see change, and not just narratives spinning going on, and not another hiring of more, spinners. We've had enough of that. We actually need authentic, old school, real characters to step forward into politics and change the goddamn place, because we deserve it.
Can I just put a little shout out?
You can, of course. Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Just obviously as an independent, it's all I just like practically all of it right up to this point in time. So if there is anybody out there that wants to donate, or you can look me up on my website is www.elainemullally.ie, and there's a donate page on a button on there. Again, look, I'm going to go the whole hog regardless. I'm fully invested in this, but my campaign team are getting on to me to say, you're not asking enough people for money.
Yeah,
they might want to donate. I said, well, if they want to donate, they can find my donate page. But so I've said I would just
call up the website again, Elaine.
www.ElaineMullally. That's ELAINEMULLALL.ie.
And can I ask you, how much, just so people get understand this, there's a limit to what you can put in your own to get elected. What is it, 30,000? Is it?
Around 30,000, yeah. But
yeah, to cover the whole thing. And
that's the max you're allowed to spend. But
yeah, under law.
What you like up to that, so yeah.
Okay. And an individual donation can be as high as what?
€1,000 for a general,
okay.
Yeah. So we can
and how much would it? Yeah, when you're putting up posters now, for example, because that's a physical manifestation of general. Others posters gone up. What volume of posters would you have to put up to cover a constituency?
I don't want to be letting everybody else know how. I'm going to say there's a rule of thumb. So, but look, you need a lot of money. That's the thing. They're costly, and
one of the things I've seen, which I thought was very novel, is to ask people to buy a poster, even though like their name doesn't go on it, but like just buy a poster, and then you feel as if you're, that's my poster as you're driving past it, when it goes up in the.
That's a good idea. Or why not buy a bundle of flyers, which they're not overly expensive, but when you're getting, like, I've gone through maybe 10,000 flyers at the moment already, so I'm into ordering the next batch now. So.
Well, maybe have a think about it. You could put it on the website. You could buy some flyers, buy some posters, and people say, "Oh yeah, I think I'll do a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of the other."
Yeah, exactly. A little shopping basket.
Yeah. So, somebody once said to me, the most important words in marketing are, "What would you like with your fries?"
I could say, "What would you like with your poster?"
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, listen, Elaine, I wish you well. It's great to hear the positivity. The story around the family, the girls getting involved in the business, all of that. Very, very human story, very Irish. I thought you've dealt with the questions I asked very well, which I would have expected anyway. And but I mean, I'm coming away from this, as I think a lot of people will, who listen to this, will come away with one message in their minds, and that's the prevalence of autism in the population. That's a real way.
No, it is, and I hope it will be. As I said, I've promised the people that I'm working with at the moment that whether I get in or not, I'm going to keep pushing and helping them with this. This is a huge. This affects a society. It's not just those parents. It's not just those families. This affects every one of us.
Well, look, Elaine Mullally, hopefully independent TD for Laois in the very near future. We'll leave it at that at this edition of Counterpoint. At some stage in the future, I hope I may have you back from maybe interviewing you across the road in Buswell's Hotel at some stage in the future. We'll see. That'll be up to the voters in your constituency. So thank you very much for coming on Counterpoint.
Thanks so much for inviting me on, Eddie. Thanks a million.